Today I'm going to talk about a tool called Taiko. It's a tool that I worked on since the last 1 year. It's a new tool. It's a JavaScript based tool, and it's created by ThoughtWorks. So let's start. Yeah. So I wanted to thank BBC Tech Meetup for giving this opportunity. I also wanted to thank Team Taiko, who are maintaining this project, and they have now made it open source. So it's now being managed by the community. So Taiko is a node library. So Christy mentioned npm and node.js. So Taiko is something similar. So you do npm install Taiko and it'll get installed just like Newman. So it's a node library, clear and concise API, and it's used to automate Chromium browsers. So there is a very specific type of browser that you can automate, and that's Chromium based browsers. So let's talk about myself a bit. I have about 15 years of testing experience, tested both web, mobile, desktop applications. I've worked in large enterprises and startups, and I'm currently the quality assurance and testing lead at GoInStore and Amplify company. So before we learn about the tool, we want to understand what are end-to-end browser test. If you notice the title, it says reliable browser automation. So let's start with end-to-end browser test. So Martin Fowler has given the definition: user journey tests are a form of business-facing test designed to simulate a typical user's journey through the system. Such a test will typically cover a user's entire interaction in the system in order to achieve some goal. They act as one path in a use case. So it's kind of like you go to a website, you see a product, you add it to the basket, you go for the checkout, you make a payment, and you get an order confirmation. That's an end-to-end user journey. You're not interested in just the product. You're not interested in just the checkout page. You're not interested in the payments page itself. It's the overall journey which the user is interested in. So, but because it's a complex journey involving a large number of steps, there are certain challenges. The main challenges are like it takes long time to execute. It's not part of the development life cycle because we normally tend to test in isolation. It's flaky. Every time we try to run it, the results are not the same. And sometimes it's tough to read or modify the code that we are trying to automate. And in the end, the end-to-end browser test goal is to simulate what a real user scenario looks like from start to finish. So Christy showed the API aspect. So you're just testing the API. You're not testing the user journey as such from the browser, where the customer is actually interacting on the website. So again, coming back to the introduction, open source browser automation tool built by ThoughtWorks. If you look at the open source history of the automation side of test tools, we look at Selenium, which was created sometime in 2004 at ThoughtWorks. Then Selenium, we had Selenium Remote Control or Selenium RC, which was like similar to an IDE where you have the playback and record, so that option. Then in 2007 we got WebDriver, so you could control the browser using the WebDriver. That again came from ThoughtWorks. And then Selenium 1 and WebDriver projects merged together and it was called Selenium 2.0. I think currently we are at Selenium 4.0, and this is something that I've taken from a blog. Taiko, if you look at the meaning itself, it's a Japanese barrel-shaped drum, and that's what the teams decided. The team that came up with the tool, they decided to name it. My first experience was itself at a meetup just like this. So I had gone to a meetup at ThoughtWorks office and I was introduced to the tool, and I was just I simply loved the simplicity of using this tool. It was also featured in the technology radar. ThoughtWorks produces this report every year, and they mention about different techniques, tools, platforms, and frameworks that you should adopt or assess or retire. And Taiko got inspired by Puppeteer. So this is the symbol of Puppeteer. And in puppet shows in Japan, they use drums. So that's why the name Taiko. So Taiko got inspired by a Node.js library again, which is Puppeteer. A lot of you might be hearing about this tool, or you might have heard about Playwright. So Puppeteer was created by Google, and Playwright was created by Microsoft. The same team actually moved to Microsoft, and they created it. So this is inspiration one. The second inspiration was Helium. This is a Python-based automation tool, and if you look at what's happening now is that the tool is trying to open the Chrome and trying to open a URL. And as you can see, as I'm writing the code, I can see what the code is trying to do. So it's not like I have to write the whole code and then I have to execute to see what happens. This is real time. As I write the code, I see the behavior. And in the demo, I'll show you how Taiko works. Taiko works in a very similar fashion. In this scenario, as you can see, they have not mentioned where to write, what to write. They've simply told, go there, do this. That's it. They have not used XPath. They have not used CSS path. They have not used any other type of selector. So moving on. So Taiko, again, this is from their GitHub page. So it's just a quick demo. Go there, write something in the search box and press the key. That's it. So click get gauge Taiko. So it clicks the URL and then close the browser. Very simple, very easy. And as I mentioned you, Taiko is a Node.js library. So you can actually go to the NPM library online, and then you can see the library itself, and there will be some certain commands on how to install. You can also check out their GitHub page and the README page. Taiko itself uses Chrome DevTools protocol API. So this is talking to the browser directly. There is no WebDriver in between. So it's just using the API from the Chromium browser and talking to it directly and controlling it. So that's why it's limited to Chromium-based browsers. Of course, being a Node.js tool, you can write a lot of JavaScript libraries and plugins, and you can integrate with Taiko and then use it. So some of the plugins that have already been created are mentioned here, and you can actually check out their GitHub page, and you can integrate them with Taiko and use it. This is just an example of running Taiko on Android. Again, I've taken it from their GitHub page, and this is a person called Sai Krishna, and he has tried to automate the Android, the browser on Android. He's trying to launch the specs. Yeah. I think it's a bit of time, but yeah, it's open up GitHub. It goes to join, it enters username, it enters email address, etc. So yeah, as you can see, you can control the browser on an Android phone using this tool as well, using the plugin. So what are the main features of this tool? Smart selectors. So as you saw from the GIF file, that you can write test scripts by looking at a web page without inspecting its source code. At no point in time, I had to look at the inspect. I had to use the inspect from the Chrome DevTools, and I didn't have to look at the source code in order to identify what element I'm trying to click. I just look at the page, I read the text, and I interact with it. It has implicit weights. So at no point in time we had to define, okay, wait for 500 seconds. I'll give you a demo, and I think that'll be more clear. So it has got some implicit weights defined already. And then you can also define explicit weights as well if you want to in your scripts. It has got an interactive recorder. So as you could see, we were writing the code and then we were executing and seeing it in real time. And that is a very powerful way to actually automate things, because most of the times you first think about writing a script and then you see what it does. But in this case, it's very powerful and you can see everything real time. You can also do request and response stubbing. So most of the automation tools these days do that. And in this case, you can intercept a request, delay it, drop it. You can send a request to some other, like a redirect URL. So you can do all sorts of things. So those things are also possible using this tool. Some of the acronyms that we use: XHR is XML HTTP request, and REPL stands for read, eval, print, loop. So this, if people who are familiar with Node, they would be familiar with this. I'll not go into too much detail. So again, why the team decided to use JavaScript? Well, JavaScript sits inside the browser, and most of our uh, what do you say, the websites, or most of the uh, technology is now moving towards in the browser. You have Microsoft Office in the browser, you have AWS, the cloud, you have all sorts of things on the browser. Chromebooks are getting popular and it's all browser. So they wanted to tap that particular power of JavaScript, which is already there in the browser, and then use it. So that's why they didn't go with Java or C# or Python. And if you look at the browser automation state, there is I've mentioned a link to the future of end-to-end testing. They have mentioned that it follows a very conservative approach. Everyone was using Java, Python, Ruby. I think Java, Python, and Ruby are very popular in enterprise applications where there is a limitation, where you have to run on multiple platforms. But if your organization is just browser-based, you can actually go ahead and start using it. Um, as I mentioned, JavaScript is already inside the browser. Electron is a wrapper, so it wraps the browser inside the JavaScript engine. If you look at WhatsApp, WhatsApp is actually based on Electron, and even Slack is based on Electron. And then you have Chrome DevTools protocol. It's taken from the Chrome Dev team, and it's currently a non-W3C standard, but it might become a W3C standard later on. So if you want to use this tool in a test automation framework, what would that look like? So the programming language, as I mentioned, JavaScript or TypeScript, which is a more descriptive version of JavaScript. You can have different test runners. So you have Gauge, Mocha, and Jest. You will have a Node.js library, you will have Taiko, and because Taiko is part of the Node.js, you can use any Node.js library with Taiko. So you can use Newman if you want. You can use Lighthouse reporting with Taiko. You can use some environment variable. There is a library for managing environment variables. You can use that with Taiko. So any Node.js library that you want, you can use Taiko with it. And because Taiko uses Node.js, it means wherever Node.js runs, you can run Taiko there. So you can run it in a Docker container. You can run it using your CI/CD pipeline. So it's all possible. And it's you can also run it in headless mode. So you actually don't even need to open a browser to automate it. Protocol, Chrome DevTool protocol, and then all the Chromium based browsers. As you can see, there is no Safari and most of the platforms. So on Mac OS, if you can install Chrome, then you can run it. And then you have, of course, Docker, Raspberry Pi, Android, Jenkins, Linux, so any other platform. And the front end, you can use Angular, Vue, or React. So it doesn't matter because they're all JavaScript. And if you want to do a tool comparison, so this comparison is actually done by the Taiko team. So they have actually not, if you look at it, Playwright is missing, but they have done a comparison of some of the most popular tools: Selenium, WebDriver IO, Testcafe, Cypress, Puppeteer, Taiko. And they have done this comparison, and it's also published on their website. So, I mean, Taiko performs pretty well, except in, say, number of languages to author tests, and maybe a bit of cross-browser support. And these are some of the competition. So I've taken the images. This is Playwright, and there are so many other tools that there are currently there in the market. So actually, as a tester, you're spoiled for choice. So it's not about which tool you want to use. It's about what do you want to do with the tool, and does that tool fulfill the purpose? If you want to do something simple, something complex, maybe Taiko is the tool. If you want to have more control and you want to test on a different browser, maybe you need a different tool. So let's look at the limitations. Language is not supported, as I mentioned earlier: C#, Java, Python, and Ruby. It doesn't support Internet Explorer, but Edge is already on Chromium, so you can automate a browser which is based inside Microsoft. Firefox itself is not supported, but Firefox nightly is supported. And as I mentioned, Apple Safari browser is not supported. And then iOS, which is on the mobile, that's not supported. So now demo. So let me quickly open my terminal. Okay, so I'll open it here. And I mean, if you want to install, you do npm install -g Taiko. And when you do that, because I've already installed Taiko, I don't want to do it again, as Christy also mentioned. So -g means global, so it will install everywhere. So you can run Taiko from anywhere in your system. You don't have to define. So I'll just say Taiko -v. Let's see what happens. Should get some version, should maybe not. So yeah, so it says Chromium, and then what's the version I'm using. So Taiko, when you're trying to install, it installs the browser Chromium itself. You can use the documentation and see if you don't want to install the browser, and you can do that. But let's quickly start Taiko and open the browser. So I've started Taiko. It's said it's using the Chromium browser. So I say open browser, and it has opened the browser, and I'll just put it here. And then I'll go to google.com. I can go to bbc.com. I say, okay, page is loaded. So it said passed. It waited automatically. I didn't have to define wait, anything like that. So I say click. And what word do I want to click? Maybe I'll just click yes. Yes, I. So I'll just click that. So it clicked, it cleared the cookies. But now I'm bored. I just want to go back to Google. So I go, sorry, not go back, go to. Go to Google. Yeah. Click, I agree. Clicked. Now I was already trying to automate this. So I'll just say, write BBC into text box above Google search. So suppose you can't identify what the text box, what this text box is. You just say there is a text Google search, right into the text box above it. So I'll write BBC into the text box above Google search. That's it. And then I press the enter button and I see the results. And I will say click BBC home. And it clicks that, it takes me to BBC page back. Now what you have seen is that I have not used any selectors. It's tried to load the page. Everything is working fine. And there's hardly anything that has, I mean, I didn't have to program a lot. I didn't have to know JavaScript. I just said, do this, do that, and it did. Now, I want to see dot code. So when I use dot code, what it has done is all the things that has passed, it has taken those commands, compiled it for me, and made the script ready for me. So I didn't even have to write the script in JavaScript. It's saying use these commands from this library, and then it's created the try catch block in JavaScript, which is very popular. It's using so normally calls are asynchronous, so it wants it to make a synchronous calls. So you have await, open browser, wait for it to finish, then go to the next step, and so on. And then if there are any error, output the error in the console. And once everything is over, close the browser. That's it. Close browser. So yeah, I mean, as you can see, nice and simple, easy. Of course, if you are not able to select an element, you can always use the XPath using the dollar symbol. I can quickly show you in the documentation. So this is a dollar selector to use XPath or CSS or any other type of proximity selectors. So if for some reason you are stuck and you can't interact with an element on the page, you can still use XPath and work with it. So yeah, it's it's great. So in the end, it's a Node.js library. It uses Chrome DevTools protocol, automates using smart selectors, as I mentioned. Uh, Type a text above something, type a text to the left of, to the right of, etc. So it uses these smart selectors. You don't actually have to explicitly specify which element to click. You can say proximity. Okay, so click something which is nearer to that, to the left, to the right. It reduces flakiness by handling weights. It comes with an interactive REPL. I think this is one of the main features which I found very interesting. As someone who was trying to learn something, I think this was quite powerful, and it's again completely open source. I mentioned some of the links: Taiko.dev, their GitHub page, discussions, documentation, their Twitter account. You can use the GitHub to post issues. I posted some of the issues that I found while using the tool, and they were the team was very responsive. And you can also ask questions about Taiko. Not an issue, but questions like how to use that, how to use this command, I'm struggling, etc. And someone will respond to you. So yeah, this presentation I had created again using JavaScript, and you can connect me on Linktree. That's my URL if you want to get in touch. And that's it. Thank you.